Hi, folks. Thanks for joining us today for DAP's webinar on sessions and unique page views. My name is Freddie Blicker. I'm an analyst with DAP, and I'm joined today by my fearless colleague, Tim Loudon, who's the program manager of DAP. A few quick notes before we begin. After today's webcast, we will send out a survey. We would really appreciate your feedback. It helps us improve future trainings for the DAP community, and we definitely take your feedback seriously. So please send us that feedback, and we'll be happy to integrate it in our next trainings. So this is a YouTube live webcast. There is a chat box. Tim will be monitoring the chat room. So please, by all means, feel free to contribute questions, and we'll do our best to answer them in the hour time frame that we have today. Also to note, we'll be sending out the deck after today's session, so don't worry about taking copious amounts of notes, especially for this webcast today. It's a pretty in the weeds type of webcast. I highly recommend folks just pay attention, just absorb it. It's some pretty challenging material. Also wanted to give a big thank you to Alex and Lauren from the DigitalGov University team. Really appreciate their help in setting up these webcasts. We couldn't do it without them. So today's webcast is a little different. We've been doing a number of webcasts over the years, the DAP 101, the DAP 201, getting into advanced reporting techniques, Google Data Studio. Today's webcast is really going to go into the weeds on sessions and unique page views. Now, on the surface, seemingly, this seems like a very simple topic, but in actuality, it is not. So that's really what we're going to be focused on today. Now, we're going to be using data from pbgc.gov. So a big thank you to Regina for agreeing to let us use their data. We'll be using some examples to illustrate sessions and unique page views. So let's dive in. So what we'll cover today. So we're going to talk about a common scenario that all of us face on a daily basis when we're trying to analyze and create reporting around content engagement. We're really going to talk and focus on why we're here, right? What are the downstream implications of using sessions and unique page views in analyzing content? We're going to have a brief overview of metrics just to make sure everyone is on the same page before we then do a deep dive into scope. Now, scope is something new that most folks in the DAP community have not touched upon yet. So we're pretty excited to kind of unveil this. We're essentially scratching the surface on a very complicated topic today. And finally, we're going to talk about some rules of thumb. When should we be using sessions versus unique page views? We've got some guidance for you, and we're hoping that that's going to help you in your journey as you analyze your content. Okay, so what if Google Analytics allowed you to customize a report so that you end up with very misleading data? I'm here to tell you that this can and often does happen with sessions and unique page views. Now, this may be surprising to most folks on this webcast today, but this is a regular occurrence. The challenge here is that Google Analytics won't warn you that this is happening. So this is why we're here today. We're here to talk about this, unpack it, make sure the folks on today's webcast can better understand this problem. So I know everyone here on the webcast and the DAP community typically finds themselves in a common scenario, right? As DAP users, we're all faced with reporting. How is our content performing? And it typically kind of looks like this. You have a bunch of content on your site. You're trying to figure out how to analyze your site's content performance. And you might go into various reports and pull a bunch of page views or sessions or unique page views combined with either the page or landing page dimensions, and then you call it a day. Well, the question before us is how and when should we be using sessions or unique page views for content performance? Because it does make a difference. It is very likely that a number of folks on the call are potentially pulling the wrong data and misinterpreting it. That is a real challenge for anyone in the analytics world and anyone using Google Analytics. So we're here to tell you today that it is not simple to unpack when to use sessions versus unique page views. There's a lot involved in this. And I will imagine that a number of folks on this webcast today will feel like Michael Scott. This gets technical. As most things are in DAP, analytics is complicated, right? There's a lot of technical background to the tool and how it reports on data. But we're going to do our best job today to unpack it and answer any questions that you might have. Okay, so why we're here today. We're going to unpack sessions versus unique page views for you today to help you understand when to use them so that you can better analyze your content. Now, this is a surprisingly common mistake, choosing the wrong metric and combining it with the wrong dimension. Now, the DAP team has even run into this when we first got into the analytics field. Everyone does this. There's no shame in doing it. But what's important is making sure that you understand the difference between the two metrics, sessions and unique page views, and understand how to pull your data correctly going forward if you have been making various mistakes in pulling your data. Now, today we're just going to be scratching the surface of how to think about reporting on the content the right way using sessions and unique page views and the pitfalls of using both of those metrics. So this is certainly not everything that exists out there, but this is our first attempt at talking about these complex topics. Now, one thing that I want folks on the webcast to think about as we go through this material today is combining the wrong dimensions and metrics or using the wrong report in Google Analytics standard reports can give you misleading or even completely wrong data about your content engagement. We're going to talk a lot about that today. So keep that in the back of your mind. Okay, so let's talk about how DAP users typically pull content reporting today. Now, on this slide, I have kind of the greatest hits of the main ways that I see DAP users pulling reporting. These are the most common ways that we see folks simply pull data for content analysis and then call it a day. So let's walk briefly through these examples together, okay? So the first one is pulling page dimension with page views or unique page views. So this slice of the data lives under the section behavior, site content, and all pages in the standard reports. And let me navigate there for you. I'm going to go to behavior, site content, all pages. Okay, so here we have the page level dimension with all the URLs for pbgc.gov. And then we have the engagement metrics, page views, unique page views, and so on. So this is one way of doing it. The other most common way of doing this is I see people go and pull the landing pages dimension with sessions. And this cut of the data lives under behavior, site content, landing pages. So let me go and show you what that looks like. So under behavior, site content, landing pages, this cut of the data lives. And you have here a landing page dimension. Now this is different from the page dimension. This is where a session starts. So now we have landing page and then we have sessions metric. And you'll notice we don't have unique page views or page views here. And then we typically see folks pulling a custom report with the page dimension with sessions. Let me see if I have a good report in here that shows you that. Modify this real quick to include pages. And this is how we typically see folks pull content, by page, right, with sessions. So these are the three main ways that we typically see folks pulling content engagement data. Now, this is why we're here, because as you saw, there are different dimensions, there are different metrics, and typically most people don't know which ones to choose. So that's the issue. that we're trying to solve for today. So why is this important? Well, with standard reports, when you pull them, how you combine dimensions and how you pull the reporting directly impacts whether you receive accurate reporting, whether you misinterpret the data, and whether you make bad content decisions based on misinterpreted or incorrect data. Now, I think we can all agree that we want to report on our site performance using the most accurate data to make data-driven decisions about how to improve our site for the public, right? This is especially important if we're comparing different groups of content to each other. If you're pulling the wrong data or misleading data about certain groups of content and trying to figure out and make decisions off of that data on whether to keep a section of content or get rid of it, well, that has pretty big implications if you're pulling the wrong metrics and dimensions in the first place. So that's the issue. So let's illustrate this challenge. Let's say you build a custom report by page with sessions, page views, and unique page views to do monthly reporting. Now, you'll see on this slide, there is a screenshot here of just that exact custom report. We've got the page dimension, we've got sessions, we've got page views, we've got unique page views. Now, here's the problem. All the metrics are different. So which one should we use? How do we know which one is right? Seemingly, this report appears to say that we should use all of them. Otherwise, why would it include this data in this report for us when we create a custom report? But I'm here to tell you that is not accurate. There's a lot of caveats with this stuff. So we're going to talk about that a little bit later. So how do we figure this all out? Well, I think first we need to start out from a kind of level playing field. So let's review the basics of dimensions and metrics. So the basics are important, right? We need to understand what dimensions and metrics are in the first place before we really go down the rabbit hole and talk about this complex topic. So for anyone who has attended our DAP 101 or 201 classes, some of this material will seem familiar, but it's important that to make sure that everyone has the basics down. So let's go through this. A dimension is a descriptor of your data. A metric is a number that measures your data. Now I've got a little screenshot in here from Google. It lays out what a dimension could look like and what a metric could look like. So for our dimension, we have city with the values of San Francisco and Berlin. We also have browser with the values of Chrome, Firefox, Safari. And then we have metrics, right? These are the numbers, sessions, and then pages per session. So in every report, you're always going to have a dimension and a metric. So if we look at this first line and how they combine together, the way that I would interpret this data set is, there were 3,000 sessions on the Chrome browser originating from San Francisco. And this traffic, on average, saw 3.5 pages per session, right? So you need both the dimension and the metric to understand engagement on a particular piece of content. Okay, for the purposes of today's webcast, we're going to be speaking specifically about a couple dimensions and metrics. We're going to be talking about the pages and landing pages dimensions, and the sessions, page views, and unique page views metrics. So we're going to be solely focusing on those. Now let's do a brief review of the main metrics that we're going to be looking at. All right. Now session, definition of a session. This is simply the entire time someone browses a website until they leave or close their browser window. Now, I've got a little graphic here from Google, shows you various page views, different events, a social interaction, a transaction. This all occurs within one session. So a session encapsulates all activity a user does on your site. Now, the way that Google categorizes the very first page viewed in a session is a landing page. Now, notice we're going to be talking about landing pages today. Now, I want to note a session always begins on the first page viewed. This is the landing page. This only occurs once until you leave the site or close your browser. So the rule of thumb here is to always use sessions with landing page dimension. Never use sessions with the page dimension. Okay. The next metric is page views. Now the definition here, this is anytime a page loads, it is a page view. This includes hitting the back button. Now let's illustrate this. I'm on pbgc.gov. When I click the reload button, this is considered a page view in Google Analytics. This page will show up with a page view. When I click on employers and practitioners, this is another page, as you can see. This will also register with a page view. If I click the back button, that is yet another page view. Okay. So a view of a page on your site that is being tracked by Google Analytics is simply a page that is being tracked by the analytics code out of the box. So if a user clicks reload, clicks the back button, these are all counted as additional page views. So the problem here, though, is that there's lots of noise, right? That doesn't necessarily tell you much. Now, the rule of thumb here is to use page views with the page dimension. Now, to clarify the noise that you see here, you need to cut through that noise by using unique page views. So let's talk about unique page views. Unique page views is simply a metric that aggregates page views during a user's session. So this basically gives credit only once to each page that is uniquely viewed, right? It's only counted for the first time a user browses each page. So in other words, this really represents the number of sessions in which a page was viewed one or more times. Now, after a session begins, every other page that is viewed is categorized with page views and unique page views. Now, for each unique page view, they're only counted once. We'll talk a little bit about that in just a second. Now, don't confuse the unique page view metric with the total number of sessions. And as a rule of thumb, use unique page views with the page dimension. So those are kind of the ground rules that we're working with when we're talking about sessions versus unique page views in today's webcast. So let's briefly review. For most folks here, this will look very familiar, but this is the DAP team's kind of visual of what a session looks like, right? So the use case here is a user Googles for gsa.gov and finds the search result on Google, and then enters the gsa.gov website from Google search results, lands on a page, page 1, then views page 2, and then views page 1 again. And then they leave. Now that's a session. You'll notice here for page views, page 1 in orange receives 2 page views. Page 2 in brown receives 1 page view. Now unique page views. Page 1 receives 1 unique page view, even though it got 2 page views. Page 2 receives 1 unique page view, right? So this is the aggregated view of page views and unique page views here. Now, this particular session only has 1 entrance, obviously, from organic search results. And then overall, there were 3 pages in total viewed in this session. So that's how this all works together. Okay, so we've kind of covered metrics, dimensions, how this all kind of works together, the various definitions. Now I want to talk about a more complex topic called scope. Now, most folks on the call today will not have heard about scope or worked with it before, but we're here to teach you about this today. Now, scope is how Google Analytics collects and formats your Google Analytics data for dimensions and metrics. Now, each dimension and metric has scope. So this scope will determine how you can use sessions and unique page views in reporting. Now, there are 4 scope types that Google uses to categorize your data as it's being collected. There's user, there's session, there's hit, there's product. Today, we're just going to be talking about session level scope and hit level scope. So let's talk about very high level, some examples of scope, dimensions, and metrics. So user level. For example, dimensions would be city, gender, Metrics would be users, new users, right? So Google kind of buckets this in a user level scope of data. Session level scope data. Some examples of this could be landing page, source medium, sessions, bounce rate, right? These are attributes that describe a single session. This gets classified once per session. And then hit level scope data. This is any individual action on a website, such as a page view or an event from downloading a PDF. And this gets classified for each hit on a page. So some examples of hit level dimensions are post name, page, event category. For metrics, it's page view, unique page view, time on page, total events. So the big takeaway here is there are these buckets where Google tries to categorize your data. Now, based on those buckets, that's going to help you determine how to pull the reporting and how to interpret it correctly. Okay, so the main idea here is some dimensions and metrics are session level. They relate to the entire session. And some dimensions and metrics are hit or page level, and they relate to a specific page. The idea here is that you should not combine different scopes of dimensions and metrics. Keep that in the back of your mind as we go through this material. So let's get a little bit further doing a deep dive on this. So let's visualize scope hierarchy. Now, Google Analytics collects and processes data in this way, right? There's a user. User comes to your site. A user has one or more sessions, right? Sessions are made up of one or more hits. Hits are multiple and occur on every page load or every event, right? So hits are essentially the building blocks of how Google Analytics captures data about the whole session, about your user, about what they're doing, and then they send it to the Google Analytics server. Now, in terms of scope, this is the hierarchy of how it works. Now, remember, we went over some examples of dimensions and metrics. Now, I've overlaid this in a visual way for you, right? So we've got user, we've got city, gender, users, new users. For session, we've got landing page, sessions, bounce rate, and that's in the tan color. And then in blue, we have hits. This is page, event category, unique page views, etc., right? So, couple things, pitfalls of scope. The Ghostbusters once famously said, don't cross the streams. Do not combine dimensions and metrics from different scopes. This gives you misleading data, okay? We're gonna talk about what that looks like now. So we've got the same visual here for scope. Only now I've specifically called out the dimensions and metrics that we're focusing on for today. Landing pages, sessions, pages with page views and unique page views. Now notice landing pages and sessions in tan are session level scope dimensions and metrics. In blue, these are hit level scoped dimensions and metrics. So you cannot mix and match landing pages in tan with page views in blue. And vice versa, you cannot mix pages in blue with sessions in tan. So the idea here is scope determines what data you can combine in Google Analytics. Now the challenge here is Google doesn't do a great job of helping you understand that. In fact, they allow you to combine these dimensions in custom reports. Now this gets super problematic because one would think if Google's letting me combine differently scoped dimensions in custom reports, well then of course I should be able to use that data. We're here to tell you that's not the case. That's why this is complicated. Okay, so let's look at a conceptual example now. How do you mix differently scoped dimensions and metrics? What happens? Well, we've got a page dimension in blue, right? This is a hit level dimension, following along with the color coding of the scope hierarchy. And then we've got sessions in tan, right? This is a session level metric. Now, let's say I wanted to pull a report with page and with sessions, like we did previously here, right? In this custom report, we've got page, and we've got sessions. Google gives you the data. But I'm here to tell you that data is incorrect. So if you're pulling a report today with page and sessions in a custom report, we're going to ask you to stop doing that and follow along closer on how we do recommend you report on this. Okay. The next few slides are going to go over some more scope examples. We're going to look at the all pages report, the landing pages report, and a custom report, and show you how scope influences what data Google gives you. Okay, let's start with the all pages report. Now remember, this is under behavior site content, all pages. This is a report based on hit scope dimensions and metrics. So when you're in this report, do you ever wonder why certain metrics are seemingly missing from this report? If you look here, we've got the page dimension. We don't have sessions. We've got page views, unique page views, etc. This is because you cannot combine dimensions and metrics of different scopes. Google somewhat gives you a hint of that in the standard reports that we're looking at right now, but they don't outright say it, right? So sessions is missing from this report. Now, this seems like a limitation, right? But excluding sessions from this report is deliberate by Google. Next example, landing pages report. Now, this is based on session scoped dimensions and metrics. And you'll notice here we've got landing page, we've got PBGC data, and then we have sessions, percentage new sessions, new users, and so on. Now, you'll notice there's no unique page views or page views in this report. They're missing. And on the surface, this seems like a limitation, but it's actually excluding these for a good reason. They're deliberately excluding data that doesn't match the scope, right? This is session-based. And then my favorite, the custom report that allows you to combine everything, even though it's wrong and misleading. In this custom report, I've pulled in page, I've pulled sessions, page views, and unique page views. Now, in this example, you should not be using sessions. Remember, page is a hit level dimension. Sessions is a session level metric. So beware using sessions with page and custom reports. This gives you misleading data. Okay, so we've talked about a lot of this kind of conceptually right now. Let's start diving a little bit deeper into some examples. So let's talk through all the ways that you can pull this data, okay? Now, let's say you're using the page dimension with page views. Well, this works, right? These are hit level dimensions and metrics. This tells me how many times each page loaded, right? So this gives you an accurate count. You can report using page with page views. And if you want to double check, you can always go to the all pages report and look at what Google has presented you to here and use that as a roadmap. You've got page with page views and unique page views. Now, let's do another example here using the page dimension with unique page views. So this tells me how many times I uniquely viewed a piece of content, right? Now, back in the report, you see unique page views here with the page dimension. So you know that these are both hit scope dimensions and metrics. So you can combine them. Now, if I viewed the same page 3 times in a session, I'd still only have one unique page view. In this way that I'd pull the report, right? So if you use unique page views instead of page views, this really gives you a more accurate count of engagement and removes the noise, right? So this is a more realistic count because it filters out the refreshes, back buttons, clicks, etc. All right. So we've got those 2 examples, right? Those pass the test, those work. The next 2, this is where it gets interesting. Now, let's say you're in a custom report and you're pulling the page dimension with sessions, like I've done here, page and sessions. What this starts to do, because the page dimension is hit level and the session metric is session level scope, you're essentially forcing Google Analytics to show you sessions that act like the metric entrances for landing pages. Now that's a mouthful. That gets confusing really quickly. So already you can see that this is not going to tell you what you hope it would tell you, right? So if you're using sessions with page, it's not giving you a realistic count of what you think it is. You need to use a hit level metric with page, either page views or unique page views, but you cannot use sessions with the page level dimension. So that one does not pass the test, right? Don't do that. Now, let's talk about another example, using landing page dimension with page views. Now, a landing page dimension, if you'll remember our scope hierarchy, this is a session level scoped dimension, right? Page views is a hit level scoped metric. So if you pull in a report looking at landing page by page views, you're essentially forcing Google to show the total number of page views in all sessions where the specific page that you're querying was a landing page. That's wrong. It's going to give you the wrong data. So do not do that. So that last one was pretty interesting, right? Combining landing page dimension, which is a session-based scope dimension, with a page view metric, which is hit-based. Now, just to illustrate how wrong this data can be, I pulled together a custom report looking at real PBGC data, pulling in the home page as a landing page dimension and as a page dimension, and I pulled page views for both of them. Now notice here for landing page, you've got 33,000 page views. For page, you've got 11,000 page views. So you've got 3 times as many page views now for landing page if you had gone into the landing pages report and pulled your home page. So this means if you pulled it this way using landing page and page views, that you're over reporting what the actual traffic is because it's including all this other data from other pages in that same session. So you can quickly see how complicated this gets and how important it is to know which dimensions and metrics you can combine together, right? So this landing page with page views is incorrect. You're essentially telling the total number of page views in all sessions where the home page was a landing page. This is not accurate. So the big takeaway here is that some dimensions are session level. They relate to the entire session. Some dimensions are page level or hit level, and they relate to a specific page. You need to be very careful about how you combine dimensions and metrics. So in this particular case, you need to pull page with page views. You cannot pull landing page with page views. Okay, so we've got some rules of thumb for sessions and unique page view logic. So I recommend folks on the webcast today reference this as you go through your regular reporting schedule and routine and really kind of think about this conceptually, right? The idea here is to figure out, number one, am I pulling my data correctly? Number two, am I misinterpreting my data, right? And if I'm misinterpreting my data or pulling my data incorrectly, how do I fix that? How do I improve? So use this slide as you go through this exercise. So the rules of thumb for using sessions and unique page views. You can combine landing page and sessions because these are session level scoped metrics and dimensions. Never use unique page views and page views here with session level scoped dimensions and metrics. A session will always begin on a landing page, okay? Now with page and page views and the page dimension and unique page views, these are hit level scoped metrics and dimensions. Never use sessions here with hit level scope dimensions and metrics. Now, Google tracks session level differently than hit or page level because of scope, right? We've got hit level scope and we've got session level scope. Remember, don't cross the streams, right? We need to keep these separate. When you're looking at content analysis, you need to be looking at page and unique page views. Use unique page views as your surrogate for sessions when using the page level dimension. Okay, so let's put this into practice. So figuring out when you're going to use sessions or unique page views is really situational, right? It depends on how you're trying to measure how your users engage with your content. Now, typically, you're going to have some questions that your boss asks you or that you're curious about, right? And that there's typically kind of two big ones that we see, right? It's where did users from external traffic, organic search or direct or email, land on my site, right? That's one question. Second question we typically hear folks are trying to answer is, what did users do on my site, right? So the two ways that users engage with your content determines whether you're going to use sessions or unique page views. So how do we put this into practice? So Google Analytics does a nice job of kind of chopping up the full user journey of a user into digestible chunks in their reports. So you can, in theory, analyze this data more easily. Now, in practice, that's a little bit more challenging than I'm making it out to be, as we all know, right? So let's think 30,000-foot view of this journey, right? So this is the use case when you're trying to figure out, how do I use sessions or unique page views, right? You're thinking about the full user journey. So a user somehow finds your site, whether that be through social media or emails, et cetera. A user then lands on your site from somewhere, right? Either from that social media or email campaign, or organic search, right? After landing on your site, a user then browses other pages. So they're doing all this stuff after they land on that initial landing page, right? So I like to tell folks to think about Google Analytics as like a puzzle, right? Google Analytics gives you a bunch of puzzle pieces, i.e. their reports, but it doesn't tell you how to put that puzzle together. So you need to piece together that user journey to figure out whether you're going to need to pull sessions or unique page views. So you really need to know which one of those two questions you're trying to answer, right? Are they coming from somewhere external and landing somewhere, or are they already on site and you just want to understand high-level content engagement? That's going to, essentially help you figure out whether to use sessions or unique page views. So which content reports use sessions and unique page views? Well, we've already talked about these today. So let's talk about them and connect the dots here. Now, we talked about all pages report and the landing pages report, remember? Now, all pages gives you the page dimension with page views and unique page views. Landing pages gives you sessions, right? With landing page as a dimension. So this is how to think about using the reports in Google Analytics to start pulling content analysis. So the goal here is really, to understand when to use sessions and unique page views in the context of these metrics, and then glean insights about your content, right? We're trying to put the puzzle together. Now, I put together a little kind of visual of this user journey on how to think about content before you go into the reports. So this is the visual, right? We've got external traffic in the light blue box, right? User finds you through any type of external channel or brand awareness. You can measure this using the channels report. So from external traffic, a user then lands anywhere on your site. And again, want to drive this home, a session begins on the landing page. Now remember, landing pages and sessions are session level scope. This is why they're combined together in how Google categorizes this data, session level scope. Now, session can only begin on a landing page. It cannot begin on a page. Remember, because page is a hit level dimension. Now, all activity that happens after this page is included in this session. So you can use the landing pages report to understand content performance from this perspective, right? So remember, the first question that people typically get asked about is, how did people engage with content coming from an external traffic source, like a marketing campaign? Well, you'd go to the landing pages report. Now, the second question, remember, was once users are already on the site, what are they consuming? What are they engaging with? What does that content look like? This is where you would be looking at the all pages report, right? So after that initial landing page, your users then go on to analyze other pages. So Google then starts collecting unique page views for all the pages after the session began. So the unique page views for every page are collected in this one session, but you need to go into the all pages report and pull the page URL with unique page views. Okay, so let's illustrate very briefly how one could pull this data themselves. So I'm going to do a live demo for you to answer these two business questions, and I'm going to talk through my thought process. So the first question is, so what was the most engaging content on pbgc.gov in organic search? Well, let me unpack this business question here for you, right? This is going to help me figure out which report I need to go to. So number one, it's asking me to think about what external traffic channel drove traffic to pbgc.gov, right? It's asking me about organic search. So I automatically know, based on this visual, that I need to be thinking about the landing pages report, right? And I need to be thinking about sessions, because I now know that landing pages and sessions are in the same scope. So how do we actually do that? Let me show you how. So I am going to go to the landing pages report in PBGC's DAP data. And I have a bunch of landing pages here, right? And I've got the sessions metric. So I'm trying to understand what was the most often visited page from organic search traffic. So automatically, I know that I need to pull landing page and sessions, because we've already reviewed in this visual, this is where you need to go to understand how users are engaging with your site from external marketing traffic, okay? Now, I need to add an organic search segment. So I'm gonna go up here, change the segment to organic traffic, hit apply. And if it loads, there we go. Now, overwhelmingly, we see that PBGC's homepage accounts for 3,768 sessions. So about 25% of all organic search traffic enters the pbgc.gov website through organic search. Now, interestingly enough, this is only for about 6 days worth of data. We see that the contact page is a landing page from organic search. So I'm sure if we looked at 3 months or 4 months worth of data, we could start to see some really interesting content changes here and performance. But the thing to drive home here is that we've got landing page and sessions. This is how you need to analyze anything external sending traffic to your site. Okay, now, what was the most engaging piece of content once users landed on pbgc.gov? That's the second question that we're going to try and answer now. Now, I've already pulled my data for organic search landing on a particular page, which is the home page, right? Now I want to understand after that, what was the most engaging piece of content? So we need to be able to look at page and unique page views, right? That's why our questions are so important. Our questions define the lens through which we use and engage with Google Analytics as a tool. So to be able to answer that question, I'm going to go to the All Pages report. And I'm going to make sure to remove my organic search segment, because I'm now looking at total site performance. Now here, overwhelmingly, we've got pbgc.gov, we've got search unclaimed pensions as the top engaged URL overall for pbgc.gov. So we've got 10,817 unique page views, right? It's about 14% of all content engagement. So the idea here is I'm not looking at an external traffic channel sending traffic to a landing page. I'm now looking at the site overall using the page dimension and page views and unique page views. So this illustrates the process through which you need to start thinking about how you analyze your content, right? And to be able to do that, you need to have questions like this to help guide you to use the tool. Having questions like this will help guide you to these specific reports that you can pull to be able to answer these questions. Okay, so a couple caveats. This wouldn't be a true Google Analytics training unless we talked about some caveats. Now, nobody ever said Google Analytics was easy. Google Analytics is hard. This stuff is complicated. So let's talk about these caveats. There are certain situations where you can combine a hit level dimension with sessions. Now, as DAP users, we typically use the hostname dimension in our reporting with sessions. A hostname dimension is a hit level dimension. Sessions is a session level metric. But I'm here to tell you that this is still correct. This is a caveat. Now, you can use hostname and sessions in this unique circumstance because Google Analytics is looking at a landing page when the hostname data is recorded. So let me show you two reports on how this looks. Let me just do a quick edit here. Change this to landing page. Okay, so I've got a custom report here looking at hostname for pbgc.gov with sessions. Remember, hostname is a hit level. Sessions is session level. So we've got hostname with sessions. So we're mixing, we're crossing the streams, so to speak. Now, if you look at landing page, we've got landing page with sessions. Now, this is a correct combination. Landing page and sessions are both session level scope. Now, let's compare the two numbers here. We've got 30,724 sessions in total, with hostname also having 30,724 sessions in total. So what this shows is that we do have an accurate count of sessions with the hit level dimension hostname. So this is a unique scenario, but one that is very important for DAP users to be aware of because a lot of us do use hostname in our reporting. So just know that you can still use hostname, which is a hit level dimension, with sessions, which is a session level metric. Okay, one other quick caveat. Now, combining a hit level dimension with user level metrics. Some of you might be wondering how scope impacts users. We're here to tell you to not combine a page dimension with a user's metric. These two will not work together because they're different scopes. So just like we're telling you not to use the page dimension with sessions, we're also telling you not to use the page dimension with users metric. So be aware of that. Okay, so a couple takeaways. This has been a pretty intense topic, and I'm sure folks on the webcast today might feel a little overwhelmed, but just know that this is the categorization of data. And to be able to understand and interpret data in Google Analytics, you need to know how Google is using business rules to categorize your data so that you're actually getting the correct reporting. So a couple takeaways. Google Analytics does a really good job in allowing you to manipulate data in whatever way you need, right? To uncover insights about content performance. but it doesn't do a great job at helping you understand scope, right? We saw this with custom reports. They let you add dimensions from different scopes with metrics from different scopes. That is incorrect. That gives you misleading data, right? That's a problem. Everyone has this issue to one degree or the other. Takeaway 2, Google tracks session level dimensions and metrics differently than hit or page level dimensions and metrics because of scope. So you always need to be aware of scope. So the idea here is use session level scope dimensions and metrics together. So that's going to be landing page with sessions. And then the other takeaway here is use hit level scope dimensions and metrics together. That's going to be pages and unique page views, or pages with page views. Okay. Takeaway number 3. When analyzing content, you really need to let the questions guide you. The questions are going to help you determine whether you go into the landing page report and pull landing pages with sessions, or whether you're going to go into the all pages report and pull page with unique page views, right? Think about the full user journey and let the questions guide you through the tool. Try to answer the questions with the tool. For any type of content analysis, when you're on site, just looking at overall content performance, use unique page views as your surrogate for sessions when using the page level dimension. That's very important. I know there are a number of very advanced DAP folks who use custom reports. Please don't use page level dimensions with sessions. It's giving you misleading data. And then takeaway 4, don't mix differently scoped dimensions and metrics in reporting, especially in custom reports, right? This is where we see most of the issues with folks getting misleading data. You want to avoid mixing scopes in custom reports. And then takeaway 5, scope is powerful. You really need to tread carefully, right? Again, your sessions and unique page views are really useful content engagement metrics, but you need to know the specific situations under which you use them. Now, the big takeaway here is some dimensions are session level and some are hit level, right? And so you're always going to have to be thinking as you go through this, is this session level or is this hit level? And do these metrics combine? If all else fails, use the standard reports as your roadmap. Go to the all pages report to understand what dimension and what metrics Google is giving you. This is a good hint as to how they're categorizing things, right? It's very important to be on top of how you're thinking about combining dimensions with metrics. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions. We've got a few minutes left today. Tim, do we have any questions that have popped up during the webcast?
Hey, Freddie, first, let me just say that was a great presentation. We have a quiet bunch today. There are no questions. I don't know if it's because people are in shock that their custom reports where they have the page level dimension mixed with page view session and user, you're telling them that maybe they might not want to do that anymore, or if that scared them away.
Yeah, I think that's certainly a possibility. I know I felt that way when I first learned about this.
We did have somebody comment saying that the presentation was fantastic, even though it wasn't a question. So I hope that I think that everyone else probably agrees that that was really informative. So thanks.
Great.
But since there are no other questions, I'll let you wrap it up.
All right, wonderful. Okay, folks. Well, if you have any other questions that you think about, and this is a very complicated topic, so please feel free, by all means, contact us with any questions at dap@support.digitalgov.gov. We are here to serve you and to answer any of these complex topics. We're happy to take a look at your custom reports if you need a sanity check and speak with you over the phone about, how do we set this report up correctly so that you can scale it, so that you can report on content engagement. This is complicated, but the DAP team is here to help you and navigate you and guide you through these complicated questions. And thank you everyone for attending, and we'll be following up after today's webcast with a survey, and we'd really appreciate your feedback as well as the deck.